Hello and welcome to ArtDay. My name is Sarah. I'm the artist behind Pinselgeschichten. You can see my hands and the project that I'm going to work on today. This is going to be a watercolor portrait. I already started the ink job and I want to finish it here. So what I did, I got two photos of this person. I'm going to tell you a little more about who that is and what the inspiration for the video is, or for the painting is, in a minute here. But I got two photos, I combined them into one, and excuse me, combined them into one, and then got them as a reference in front of me. It's pretty much just line work as it is here. I don't know if you can really see it on camera. I think you can. There's very little graphite pencil outline here that I put down on this huge paper. You can't see all of the paper because see how big this pad is. I just framed what I think I will use for watercoloring. And then I went on top with a 0.1 permanent black marker, and I'm kind of going for the urban sketching kind of a look here, so I thought I'd finish that off on screen, and that will be my outline here. So I'm just gonna finish this little bit here before I go into watercoloring, but I wanted to include that tiny little bit of a process. So all in all, until this point here, I've been working for almost 2 hours already, and that is way too long for my videos, so I always take out that part and do that off screen because I think it's just maybe kind of boring, or I would have to make more than one video, which is something, if you want to see that, you gotta let me know. So here's the, let's extend this a little bit, the sleeve. But for what I wanted to do here, I thought the urban sketching kind of a look with my ink lines would work best. Not the cartoony look, but the urban sketching. So let me see if all my line work is kind of good. Well, I gotta add a little here. So the inspiration for this particular painting here is him and his favorite song. Now, if you remember, if you've seen a couple of my videos, I'm really inspired by music when it comes to artwork. Excuse me. And what I really like is people sending me songs, their favorite songs, or one of their favorite songs, or maybe one that really made an impact on them. And then I listen to it and see if an inspiration comes up. Something artwork wise, and then I paint that. So his favorite song is a German one, and it is called Der Beste der Welt, and I have a link in the description box to the song if you want to hear it. Just check the description box. So this is Angelo, and I met him at the wedding of my friend recently. I don't know if you watch the vlogs, so if you do, you know that I've been at a wedding of a very dear friend of mine, and we met at that wedding and became really fast friends, and we've been texting since. And one thing that I asked him, of course, as I do with so many people, what's your favorite band, or what's your favorite interpreter of music? What's your favorite song of them? Send it to me in case I don't know it, and I will take a listen and see if anything sparks with inspiration. So I did that with him as well. The song you can hear, I'm not gonna listen to it now that I'm painting, because I just listened to it all the time while I was drawing and outlining, and now after 2 hours on repeat and repeat and repeat of that song, well, I think I have it in my mind now. It's I heard it often enough. So I can actually not do a voiceover like last time, but can actually talk to you while I am painting. So my ink lines should be dry now. One thing that we did, so I told him, you know, this is what I see in my head. Can you please send me a reference photo of you? Because, well, he brought me to that song, so I wanted him to be the person depicted in the picture. Because in my mind, when I heard this song, I was seeing a guy in exactly that position, really relaxed, content with life, happy. And I thought, okay, so I'm not gonna paint a random guy, I'm gonna paint him doing that or being in that position. So let me wet the paper while I'm talking. So I thought, well, be brave, send me photos of you in that position, blah, blah, blah. I adjusted a few things along the way from the first picture he sent me. And then I was like, okay, I see so many possibilities in my mind. I had kind of a color combo that I wanted to use, but I wasn't really all that sure if it would not be kind of boring. So I asked him, you know, what are your two favorite colors? And now the funny thing, he said exactly the same two colors that I thought would fit really well with this kind of a painting. So my color scheme for today is blue and gray. I'm going to use Payne's Gray and Prussian Blue Indigo, probably. Maybe a little purple in there just to enhance a few colors. Now I have to lean to see if I got everything. Yep, that looks good. And I'm gonna start with Payne's Gray. And you know, this is how this painting came about, how I was inspired for that. So I just thought, while I was preparing the line work and such, I thought, you know, I so much enjoy this, so why not maybe do that more often? So what I want to ask you, if you feel like it, if you want this, you could maybe send me your favorite song or a song that made a huge impact on you, positive or negative, something, an experience maybe that is connected to a song. If you want to send me that, I will take a listen and see if something sparks, if I can be seeing something in my mind, like a scenery, and then I will, well, paint it. So leave your favorite song or the song you want to send me. It could be that it is more of a sad song for you or connected to more of a sad memory. But send it to me and I will see if I can paint it. So for this particular painting here, I said it earlier, I want to stay kind of like in the urban urban look. So I'm going to be very loose with my way of painting. As you can see here, I'm using huge amount of water. And I'm just pretty much starting with the gray, dabbing it in. And then I will add my blues. And this is more like a wet in wet technique that I'm doing here. So I need some, no, that's not the right one. Where's the other blue? Are you the Prussian blue? I don't want to use, yeah. I don't want to use ultramarine blue. It's just too cold in hue for my personal taste. So I'm going with the warmer blues here. I have a cold gray that I'm using. So I think a warm blue fits perfectly well just to, well, have a bit of contrast and such. Let it bleed into the gray. And being very, very loose with my brush strokes here. Gosh, I got too much tongue and too many teeth in my mouth to be able to talk clearly, obviously. And then I'm going in with my trusty favorite color when it comes to shading of all time, and that is my beloved indigo blue. So for the first layer here, I pretty much outlined, I guess I outlined the spots that I want to paint. So I'm now going to concentrate way more into the center for the next couple of layers. And pretty much let the painting bleed out towards the edges. This is something that I really like to do. You've seen me do that a couple of times. I've showed you pictures of flowers where I did that, painted a deer where I did that, and of course also last week's painting of another song that really inspired me with a different kind of friend. So that was Animal I've Become. Now, no splattering, Miss King. That's not gonna help. Now I'm carefully gonna go onto the skin and start putting down some gray here. It's really, really light. I have hardly any pigment on the brush, just loads and loads of water. But I wanna have a little pigment here and then put more and more on top. The focus color-wise, like the intense colors, will be on the shirt and the arm, and on the face it's gonna be a little lighter because, well, for one, the angle is you looking up somebody's body, so the face is further away than the shirt and the arm are. So of course I have to be a little, or I want to be a little lighter there, because I don't really have anything around Angelo to depict depth. So it's very watery, very loose. Well, of course it's watery because I'm painting with watercolors, but it's very watery there. There's no structure, no nothing that could indicate depth or like perspective in a room. So I want to make that visible with just the intensity of color that I'm going to put down. So now I'm thinking, I said earlier I might add a little purple, and I will probably just use it, well, not pure, but in a mixed form. So I'm taking my purple watercolor and my trusty indigo, and I'm gonna mix them. It's just a tiny little bit of a different hue. So I can now, I'm gonna start here, add that in a bit. Also on the skin, I don't want the skin to be gray and the shirt to be blue, but have it overlap a tiny little bit. So I could darken parts up. And all these lines here on the shirt, they're not pattern, but they're wrinkles. So I will shade these way more once I have the first layer dry. I could use my blow dryer at this point, but I don't want certain colors to pool in certain places, and since the paper's already buckling quite a bit, I don't want to have too much pooling going on of paint in certain places, so I have to be a little more patient and let it dry all on its own for a while, and then I can add the blow dryer to the process and see there's really some very dark spots here. I can add the blow dryer a little later. So I'm just going back and forth between pure indigo and my purple indigo mix. So you can see here it's pooling quite a bit. So I'm starting to set highlights while the paper is still really, really wet. Also, I'm starting my vlogging camera. So I'm gonna set highlights, which means I'm using a bit of paper towel. I'm just going to dab away parts, dry up the paper in the process, which means that the paint won't flow there anymore, and that will lead to that part of the paper not being soaking up any watercolor, because watercolor only flows onto wet spaces, not onto dry ones. So I can pretty much set highlights just by having a little bit of dry paper here, and I think the light will come from the right. I really like that in this case, just the way this almost halo around his head formed. This is nothing that I planned. I just, as you saw, I just put the paint down and then see where it goes and decide on shading because of where the color goes, so, or the paint goes. This is, I think, kind of the interesting part of watercolors that you can play with. You can have a totally planned out painting with when it comes to your light source, not sauce. Light source is also cool, but when it comes to your light source, and you could also just let it go and let the paint do its thing, and then work with whatever happens there. This is actually something that I really like once in a while. I think it fits for certain paintings. It doesn't for others. So if you have, like, say, a landscape and you have like an obvious light source, well, then you cannot really play with that. But especially, I think, in portraits, you could, if you don't have anything in the background that indicates, okay, this is a light source, this is where light and shadow are, you can really, really play with it, and I really like that. So every so often, I just play with that. So we need a little more Payne's Gray. I'm going in with way less water now. The paper is still super wet, so I don't need a lot of water for the paint to flow, but I already want to put in some of the darker colors. Ooh, it was maybe a little much, so also here on the thumb. And just let it do its thing. So here on the very dark spots, underneath the collar, for example, I want to put in a little more gray. Just let it do its thing. And of course, a little here, just a bit. On all the spots where there are fabric wrinkles. And I feel, or I find, not I feel too, but I find that this kind of painting style works best with a bigger brush. So you're not limiting yourself to, oh my gosh, I want to stay in that line and in that line. Of something, of whatever you're painting. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush eventually, of course. But I find that it works really well with a bigger brush, because it pretty much makes you work the same way as those squiggly, urban, sketchy kind of lines do. And that is something that I think makes this kind of painting process a little easier. So I'm feathering out the blue a little more because I want this to be a little darker down here. Gonna pull the pigment a bit, not to have too much of a harsh line, because I only like him in certain places. They don't fit everywhere, so feathering them out and just making the line work or the edge of the watercolor painting a little bit smoother. I think that works really well. Now, time for the blow dryer. I'm gonna be super careful not to have, oh, my lights are flickering, so I've gotta be careful with my cables here. Gosh, when other people use my blow dryer, this is not how it's supposed to go. Gotta instruct my best friend again. So now I got my blow dryer in the right position. I'm gonna cut out the drying process because for one, it's really loud on the audio, and second, it's just super boring to watch. At least I think so. If you think differently, please let me know in the comments and I could change that up. But I will start drying around the edges first, because over here the paper is super wet and it will probably, the pigment sits quite on top, so it will move up and down. I don't want that. I want to have it stay in the place that it is. So I'm going to dry off that section here last. Here we go. So now I'm moving on to a way smaller brush. I think I want this one, or is this still too big? Do I have a smaller one? No, you're too small, maybe you. So I'm taking these two. This is a number 6 round, and this is a number 0 round. And now I'm going on adding details. or a little more, well, contrast. Placing my paint a little more planned, not as loose as I did before. So of course there's going to be gray here on the beard because the skin there is of course darker. Oop, that was a little much. I'm still working with as much of a loose hand I can master, but just having the smaller brush makes it way more controllable. So this is what I'm going for here. Not have him look so one-dimensional, but adding depth and shadows and such, a little more texture with my brush here. And every so often I just clean up my brush, load it up with a little bit of water, and then I pull the pigment that I just put down because I don't want to have too many harsh lines. I want this to be rather soft because I like, because I think I like too, but I think that those ink outlines, they are harsh enough. I don't want them to be lost in the painting, but I also don't want this to look too cartoony, like in a comic book or something. So I'm incorporating the watercolor into the ink lines, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean? But I don't also want this to look like a comic book from the 50s when it comes to where my or how my shadows are in there. So in case you didn't know, or in case you haven't really read a lot of comics because it's not your thing, there's almost like geometric shapes that certain colors are used in for shading in those comic books. And this is not something that I want to go for here. So I'm going over my ink lines with my watercolor. A little more here on the eyelashes, just darkening that up. Again, just a wet water brush and pulling the pigment a little wetter. It was a bit too dry. Same here on the neck. Need a little more there. Also shading the jawline a little more, because he's not only having a goatee, but he has very, very short stubble of beard around it. So just to indicate that and not say, okay, this is smooth baby bottom kind of a skin, I'm pulling up the paint a little more. Almost like a dry brush here. Now I'm going in with my indigo, because like I said before, I don't want the skin just to be gray and the shirt blue. No, I want a little more interest there. So I'm using a load of water with my indigo. But I'm giving it like a bluish tint here. Cleaning out my brush, and then just as before, pulling the pigment a little more to avoid the cartoon lines. But I think it just adds so much more depth to a painting if you use more than one color on top of each other, if you don't limit, like, or if you, well, yeah, you don't limit a color to a certain thing. So I'm not limiting the skin to be only painted in gray tones. I add a little blue. It's the same color as in the shirt. This is almost, it's not, but from when you talk about concept, it's almost a monochrome painting. It's definitely not, because I used 3 colors already. But if you know what I mean, like the principle, I'm coloring or I'm painting the same way as I do with monochrome paintings, like real monochrome paintings. But I'm using 3 colors just to have a little more interest and depth going on here. So now I gotta be careful, because I have a lot of indigo here on the eyelashes. Need quite a bit of water. Be brave and pull the pigment. There we go. Same on the other side. In case you do that with a red paint work really quickly because red and purple too, they seep into the paper and then they're way more difficult to move around or to lift from the paper. So you probably have to be a little braver there. So I want more dark here, also on the ear. I will very likely go in with a marker at the end because you can't really see it at this point, but he's wearing earrings. One of them is black and one of them is white. So I'm thinking I probably want to add a little bit of black or white to that in the end for them not to get lost. Also, the buttons on his shirt could probably need a little white. So I would very likely use my gel pen, color the earrings, and then go on top with watercolor to tone it down a bit. And this is my friend calling. So while I played this wonderful music for you, because I've been talking to my friend on the phone and painting at the same time, because there's some spots that I didn't want to get dry, I feathered out the paint on the face. I'm gonna let that sit for a minute. There's probably going to be a little more. Ouch. Oh God. Bumped into my desk. So the arm is a little dark in comparison to the face, and I actually like the way the face turned out. So I'm going to wet my paper here, and then I can lift the watercolor. So I'm going to take my paper towel. I'm going to lift pigment off the paper so I get a little more of that light gray look that I also have here on the face. That's a very handy trick that you can do with anything but purple and red. With purple and red you really have to be quick to do that. But now I can go over this again, pull a little bit of the pigment, not to have a harsh line. feathering out some of the paint, still making sure that I don't pull too much pigment and keep the light gray there. Like so. Okay, now I can go back to the face. I want to add a little more indigo. Also to the beard. And the eyebrows and such. And of course to his lips as well. And smoothing out my layer of paint. Then I want to go in with my purple and indigo mixture just to add a little more interest. And a little purple here. And then pure indigo, a little more here on the beard. And also on the neck. Okay, now I can, I think this is tiny little too much blue here. So I'm going over 2 spots and blot away the paint. There we go. Restart. First a little bit of gray. Let that sit and go on top with both the purple and the indigo a little later, but I gotta mix a new batch of purple and indigo. So I want a little bit of that tone on top of the neck too. Not too much though, just a bit. Like so, and feather it out. I'm also, as you can see, painting a little bit outside of his body and pulling the pigment into the background, because it's the same thing as with other objects that I said before. I don't want this to be colored in line work. I pretty much like the shirt. I might want to add a little more indigo in some spots. So I'm just going around his hand now, darkening up the shirt. Because I want his hand to pop out a little more. Otherwise I think it would be too dark. Need a little more indigo. And underneath the arm on that wrinkle here. So I'm going to dry this off. And then I will add the next layer of details. Maybe it's the final one, I don't know yet. Where did I put the green brush? Okay, this is dried off. Now I'm going to add my purple blue mixture to his beard. The one thing where I had to repair, maybe a little bit also to the lips once more, just a bit. So now I think I want my bigger brush once more, because here on the lower arm I want to add a little bit of my purple blue mixture, and with my bigger brush it's just a little smoother to apply. Cleaning out my brush, dabbing it off, and wetting the other part of the arm for the dark blue to flow into. Cleaning that off. And now I can go in with my smallest brush, this very tiny one here, and add just some more very spot on shading color. So for example here, tiny little bit of that purple mixture here on the fingernails. Not too much though, because it's not supposed to look like he painted his nails, but they're gotten kind of lost. Now I'm adding a little bit of white paint, because I had said I wanted highlights, but I lost them a little bit, so I'm just adding a bit here. I know this looks like super harsh highlight, but you can do the same thing with white as you can do with other colors. You can feather them out. See? And this is way harsher of a highlight. Just gives this a little lighter of a touch here on top of the shirt where I think the light hits. So the light source is somewhere here, pretty much. Could actually also do that a tiny bit on his nails, really just a tiny smidge. Just a drop. Gotta work quite fast. Pulling this quite a bit into the gray around it. Oh, that was maybe a little too much white, so dab, dab, dab. Gotta go over this with my black marker later when it's dry, because this is white, opaque white, so I don't want to lose my line work. But maybe a little Payne's gray on the wrinkles. On the knuckles. So here on the wrist bone. I could actually use dark gray and white watercolor to color his earrings. Then I wouldn't have to add a gel pen and and paint over that. So this is what I'm gonna do. But I'm not using black for his other earring, I'm using Payne's gray. So I think this is dark enough. Gonna have to let this dry or go on top with my blow dryer. So this white here, is it dry? Yeah, it is. So now what I want to do is have a few sprinkles and splatters, but I don't want any on him. So what I'm gonna do is cover him up. Would be so nice if the paper would rip in a way that was suitable. So I'm covering him up, not to accidentally have splatter on him. Okay, that should do it. And now I gotta stand up. If my fat old head is in the screen, I'm sorry. Oh, and my audio is almost dying. So I'm taking indigo. I'm also painting my full desk. Okay, and now I'm doing the same with Payne's Gray. And that's enough, I think. Cleaning up my brush. Also my desk. I have to clean my desk. Big time. So now I can remove my paper towel. And there's no splatter on him. So there we are. Gotta move that up. This is my new painting. I hope you enjoyed watching along. I gotta add one thing though. Gotta add some more of my line work. I totally forgot. So let me quickly dry off my piece and then I go in with a ink pen for the very last time. Move quickly before my audio equipment dies. So I'm just going over the lines here where I used the white because they were kind of lost because the white is an opaque white. Squiggle, squiggle. Also have to add some here. And this earring, I didn't really lose that much on this side. And then, ooh, I've got a water drop on my paper and I don't want that. There we go. And then of course I have to sign because that's what I do. There it is. This is my painting. I hope you enjoyed watching along. If you have any questions, comments, as per usual, please leave them in the comment section below. Please also send me your favorite songs or songs that you words that you think of or that remind you of certain moments. They don't have to be your favorite songs, but impactful songs, let's call it like that. Send them to me. I'm gonna paint them, whatever it is that I see in my head. I'm really curious what kind of songs you like, and I would very much appreciate your input. The blog post is up by now, so if you want to know what exact numbers and pencils and pens I used here today, hop on over to my blog. It's in the description box below. Listen to the song. It's also linked in the description box below, and I'm going to see you on Monday in 2 weeks with a new piece of art. It's either going to be a painting or a crafting thing. I do have 2 projects coming up, so I don't know yet what I'm gonna go for next time. But I thank you very much for watching. Take good care. Have a lovely day, and do some artwork, guys. It's fun, I can tell you. So, bye.